Marcus Vail ruled Chicago's underworld with ice in his veins, until a red light shattered everything. On his way to seal a billion-dollar engagement to heiress Cassandra Halden, he glimpsed a ghost. Elena Cross, the woman who vanished 3 years ago, now clutching two toddlers who had his eyes, his mouth, his everything. 1 second of recognition, one moment of terror on her face. Then she ran. The crime king who controlled an empire couldn't control the train that swallowed his past whole. Now Marcus faces an impossible choice: the calculated marriage that secures his throne, or the truth that could destroy it. If you want to see how far a father will go to reclaim what was stolen, stay until the end, and drop a like and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain hammered Chicago like 1,000 fists against glass, turning Michigan Avenue into a river of brake lights and black umbrellas. Inside the armored Mercedes, Marcus Vail sat perfectly still, watching water streak down bulletproof windows while his driver navigated the crawl toward the Drake Hotel. The engagement party waited 6 blocks ahead. Champagne fountains, string quartets, 200 of the city's most powerful families gathered to witness the union that would legitimize everything Marcus had built in blood and silence. Cassandra Halden would be there already, draped in diamonds and impatience, her father's banking empire ready to scrub Marcus's money cleaner than holy water. The Halden name carried weight in boardrooms and country clubs, places where Marcus's cash still smelled like gunpowder no matter how many lawyers buffed it. Tonight would change that. Tonight, Marcus Vail would become respectable. He checked his Patek Philippe, 20 minutes late, which Cassandra would interpret as a power play rather than traffic. Good. Let her think he orchestrated everything, even the weather. The illusion of control was half of what kept men like him alive. Boss? His driver Torres nodded toward the windshield. Lights stuck. Marcus glanced up. They'd stopped at the intersection of State and Lake. Rain drumming harder now, the traffic signal frozen on red like the city itself had paused to catch its breath. Pedestrians darted across the crosswalk in desperate sprints, their cheap umbrellas inverting in the wind. Then he saw her. A woman in a battered raincoat 2 sizes too large, hunched against the storm, gripping the hands of 2 small children as she half-dragged them across the street. One of the kids stumbled, maybe 4 years old, maybe younger, and the woman scooped him up without breaking stride, the other child clutching her coat like a lifeline. Marcus watched with the detached interest of someone used to observing human struggle from behind tinted glass. Until she turned her head. The angle was wrong, the rain too heavy, but something in the tilt of her jaw made Marcus's breath catch. She pushed wet hair from her face with her free hand, just for a second, and the streetlight hit her profile like a stage spot. Elena. The name detonated in his chest before his brain could process impossibility. 3 years. 3 years since Elena Cross had walked out of his life without explanation, without a forwarding address, without a single word to the man who'd given her everything except the one thing she'd asked for, a way out. Marcus leaned forward, his hand finding the door handle. Torres. Boss? Stop the car. We're stopped. I mean, shut it off. Now. Torres knew better than to question the edge in Marcus's voice. The engine died. Marcus shoved the door open and stepped into the downpour, rain soaking through his $1,500 suit in seconds. He barely noticed. His eyes tracked the woman as she reached the opposite curb, both children now clinging to her coat as she tried to juggle a torn shopping bag and keep them moving. Elena! The shout tore from his throat, raw and unplanned. She froze. Actually froze mid-step, her whole body going rigid like she'd been shot. Then she spun, scanning the street with wild eyes, and when her gaze found Marcus standing in the middle of State Street with rain plastering his hair to his skull, her face went absolutely white. Even from 30 feet away, Marcus could see the terror. She grabbed both children and ran. Elena! Marcus started after her, vaguely aware of Torres shouting something behind him, of car horns blaring as he sprinted across the intersection. The woman moved fast despite the kids in the rain, darting down the Lake Street subway entrance with the desperate speed of prey that knew the hunter's face. Marcus hit the stairs 3 at a time, his dress shoes skidding on wet concrete. The station smelled like piss and ozone, fluorescent lights flickering over cracked tile. He caught a flash of her raincoat disappearing around a corner toward the Red Line platform, heard one of the children crying. Elena, wait! He rounded the corner and nearly collided with a transit cop who grabbed his arm. Whoa, buddy, slow down! Marcus jerked free, scanning the platform. There, halfway down, Elena was crouching in front of the two boys, whispering something urgent while wiping tears from the smaller one's face. The children looked exhausted, soaked through, and when the bigger one turned to glance back, Marcus's heart stopped completely. The kid had his eyes. Not similar. Identical. The same unusual shade of gray-green that Marcus had inherited from his Greek grandmother. The same slight downturn at the outer corners. And the mouth. Marcus knew that stubborn set of the jaw because he saw it in the mirror every morning. A train's headlights appeared in the tunnel, wind pushing ahead of it. Elena! Marcus started forward, but she'd already seen the train. She scooped up both children, impossibly strong for her size, and backed toward the edge of the platform. The smaller boy buried his face in her neck. The bigger one stared at Marcus with those stolen eyes, his expression caught somewhere between curiosity and fear. Marcus raised his hands, trying to look non-threatening while his mind screamed 1,000 questions. Please, just talk to me. I won't. The train shrieked into the station, brakes screaming. Doors hissed open. Elena stumbled backward into the car, never taking her eyes off Marcus. Both children clutched against her like she expected him to rip them away. Other passengers pushed past her, oblivious to the silent devastation happening in their midst. Please. Marcus reached the edge of the platform just as the departure chime sounded. Elena, are they... The doors closed. Elena stood pressed against the far wall of the car, both boys wrapped in her arms, tears streaming down her face as she mouthed 2 words through the scratched plexiglass. I'm sorry. Then the train pulled away, carrying his ghost back into the dark. Marcus stood on the empty platform, rain from his clothes pooling at his feet, while the tunnel swallowed the taillights whole. His phone buzzed. Cassandra, probably, wondering where her fiancé had disappeared to. He ignored it. His hands were shaking, which Marcus Vale's hands never did, because men who controlled empires didn't shake over memories. Except those hadn't been memories. That had been Elena, solid and terrified and real, with 2 children who looked exactly like Marcus had looked in his own childhood photos. Twin boys. Maybe 3, maybe 4 years old. The timeline fit. Holy Christ, Marcus whispered to the empty station. Torres appeared at his elbow, breathing hard, holding an umbrella that did nothing for Marcus's already ruined suit. Boss, we need to move. You're exposed here. Marcus turned to his driver, his mind already shifting into the cold operational mode that had kept him alive through a dozen gang wars. Call the office. I want every investigator we have on retainer working tonight. I need Elena Cross located. Current address, employment, known associates, everything. And I want background on any children associated with her name. Boss, the engagement party is canceled. Torres blinked. Cassandra's going to... I don't care what Cassandra's going to do. Marcus started toward the stairs, his shoes squelching with each step. Tell her I had an emergency. Tell her whatever you want. But I'm not setting foot in that hotel until I know what the hell I just saw. The drive back to Marcus's near-north high-rise passed in silence. Torres knew when to talk and when to vanish into the upholstery. Marcus stared out the window, watching rain turn the city into an impressionist painting, while his mind replayed those 2 seconds when the bigger boy had looked at him. Recognition. The kid had recognized something. By the time they pulled into the private garage, Marcus had 3 missed calls from Cassandra, 7 from her father, and a text from his own attorney asking if the engagement was still happening. He deleted them all and rode the elevator to the penthouse, Torres trailing behind like a loyal shadow. The apartment sprawled across the top floor, all glass and steel in deliberate emptiness. Marcus had bought it 5 years ago because the view dominated the skyline like a throne room, but he'd never bothered making it feel like anything except a place to sleep between meetings. No photos, no personal touches, nothing that suggested a human being actually lived in the space. Elena used to hate that about him. She'd tried, in the beginning, to add warmth, plants, throw pillows, framed pictures of the 2 of them. Marcus had tolerated it because he tolerated anything Elena wanted back then. But after she left, he'd stripped it all out, returning the penthouse to its natural state of controlled isolation. Now he stood in the living room, still dripping on imported marble, and wondered if those two boys lived in a place with toys and laughter and mess. His phone rang. Cassandra. Marcus answered on the fourth ring. "Where the hell are you?" Her voice could cut glass. "Do you have any idea how this looks? My father's been making excuses for an hour." Something came up. Something came up. She laughed, sharp and humorless. "Marcus, there are senators here. The governor showed up. Half the people in this room are now questioning whether you're serious about this arrangement. I'll make it right." "When?" "Because right now you're humiliating me in front of everyone who matters." Marcus closed his eyes, forcing his voice into the smooth negotiation tone he used with enemies. "Cassandra, I apologize, genuinely, but I need 24 hours. There's a situation I have to handle, and it can't wait." Silence on the other end, calculating. Cassandra Halden didn't get angry, she got even. "A situation." "Yes." "Does this situation have anything to do with the fact that you just destroyed a $5,000 suit running through the rain like a madman?" Marcus glanced down at himself. He'd forgotten about the suit. "How did you—" "Your driver called mine. Loyalty's such a flexible concept, isn't it?" Her voice turned to ice. "Let me be very clear, Marcus. My father and I are offering you legitimacy. We're offering you access to financial structures that would take you a decade to build alone. We're offering you a future where your money doesn't smell like blood. In exchange, you show up, smile for photos, and play the part of the reformed businessman. That's the deal." "I know the deal." "Then honor it. Tomorrow night, my father's hosting a private dinner at the club. Just family and a few key investors. You'll be there, you'll be charming, and you'll repair the damage you caused tonight. Understood?" Marcus thought about those gray-green eyes staring at him from a subway car. "Understood." "Good." Cassandra's tone softened slightly, though calculation hummed underneath. "Marcus, I get it. You're used to controlling everything, but this partnership only works if we both show up. Don't make me regret choosing you." She hung up before he could respond. Torres appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. "Investigators are mobilized. I told them to start with last known addresses and work outward. They'll have preliminary reports by morning." Marcus nodded, stripping off his ruined jacket. "What about the hotel security footage?" "Already requested. We should have the subway camera angles too, but those take longer. City bureaucracy." Torres hesitated. "Boss, if I can ask, who is she?" "Someone I thought was dead." "And the kids?" Marcus didn't answer, just walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago's glittering sprawl. Somewhere out there, Elena was putting two exhausted children to bed, probably in some cramped apartment where the heat didn't work and the locks were garbage. Somewhere out there, his past had collided with his present, and Marcus couldn't unknow what he'd seen. "Get me everything," he said quietly. "I don't care what it costs." The reports started arriving at 4 a.m. Marcus hadn't slept. He'd showered, changed into comfortable clothes, and spent the night in his office reviewing security protocols and making contingency plans for conversations he didn't know how to have yet. When Torres knocked with a tablet full of findings, Marcus was on his third espresso and second pack of cigarettes, a habit Elena had almost broken him of once. "Found her," Torres said, setting the tablet on Marcus's desk. "Took some digging. She's been using her legal name but staying off social media. No permanent address until 8 months ago." Marcus picked up the tablet. The screen showed a scanned lease agreement for a studio apartment above Lou's Bakery in Pilsen, a working-class neighborhood south of downtown. Rent, $800 a month. Tenant, Elena Marie Cross. Co-occupants, 2 minor children, names listed as Milo Cross and Evan Cross. Marcus's hands tightened on the tablet. Milo and Evan. Both boys, both 4 years old according to the lease. Birth certificates list mother as Elena Cross, father as unknown. Unknown. The word hit Marcus like a fist. "Where's the bakery?" "West 18th Street, near Ashland. Working class area, mostly immigrant families. The bakery owner confirmed Elena works there part-time, morning shift 5 days a week. The boys go to a community preschool 2 blocks over." Marcus studied the building photos Torres had pulled. The bakery looked old but clean, the kind of place that sold conchas and pan dulce to locals who'd been coming for generations. The apartment windows above showed faded curtains and a child's drawing taped to the glass. "She's broke," Torres said quietly. "Credit check shows she's living paycheck to paycheck. No savings, no assets, no car. Everything she makes goes to rent, food, and childcare." Marcus set down the tablet and lit another cigarette, blowing smoke at the ceiling. Elena had left him 3 years ago with nothing except the clothes on her back and whatever cash she'd had in her purse. He'd tried to find her, hired investigators, called in favors, even threatened people who might have helped her disappear. But Elena had vanished like smoke, and eventually Marcus had stopped looking because the alternative was admitting she'd wanted to leave badly enough to erase herself completely. Now he knew where all that desperation had gone. Into 2 boys with his eyes. "I want surveillance on the apartment," Marcus said. "Discreet. I need to know her routines, who she talks to, where she takes the kids. And I want deep background. How she survived the first year, where she got medical care, if anyone helped her." Torres made notes. "What about the engagement party situation?" "Handled. I'm having dinner with Cassandra tomorrow night, playing the repentant fiancé." Marcus stubbed out his cigarette. "But after that, I'm going to see Elena. In person, alone like. Boss, if she ran from you once, she ran because she was terrified. I need to know why." Marcus stood, rolling tension from his shoulders. 3 years ago, Elena left without a word. Now I find out she's been raising my sons in poverty while I've been building empires. Something happened, Torres. Something bad enough that she chose this, he gestured at the tablet, over anything I could offer. "You think someone threatened her?" Marcus thought about the terror on Elena's face when she'd recognized him. Not anger, not resentment, pure primal fear. "I think someone made her believe leaving was the only way to stay alive," Marcus said softly. "And I'm going to find out who." The surveillance photos arrived throughout the day, each one a small knife in Marcus's chest. Elena leaving for work at 4:30 a.m., the boys still sleeping. Elena picking them up from preschool, both kids launching themselves at her legs. Elena in the park, pushing them on swings while eating a sandwich that was probably her only meal. The boys looked healthy, skinny but not starving, their clothes clean if threadbare. Milo, the bigger one, had Marcus's stubborn independence, always running ahead while Evan, quieter and more cautious, stayed close to Elena's side. They laughed a lot in the photos, which somehow made everything worse. Marcus had missed 4 years of laughter. The dinner with Cassandra and her father that night was exactly the performance he'd promised. Marcus arrived on time, dressed impeccably, armed with apologies and charm. He praised the wine selection, laughed at the elder Halden's hunting stories, and let Cassandra show off the engagement ring she'd already commissioned, an obscene diamond that probably cost more than Elena's annual salary. "Much better," Cassandra murmured when her father stepped away to greet another guest. "See? When you focus, you can be quite civilized." Marcus smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "I'm a man of my word." "Are you?" She studied him over her wine glass. "Because you seem distracted, Marcus, even now. Your body's here, but your mind is somewhere else entirely." "Just business." Cassandra didn't believe him, but she was smart enough not to push. "Well, whatever it is, handle it quickly. We're announcing the engagement officially next week. Full press conference, photos, the works. My father wants to move fast on the merger." Marcus nodded, already planning how to be in 2 places at once. One foot in Cassandra's world of clean money and social standing, the other in Elena's world of truth and consequences. That night, lying alone in his too-big bed, Marcus made a decision. Tomorrow, he would go to the bakery. He would face Elena without bodyguards or threats or the weight of his reputation. He would ask her the question that had been burning in his chest since the moment those subway doors closed. "Why did you take my sons and run?" And depending on her answer, Marcus would either build a bridge or burn the world down, trying. Wow. Lou's bakery smelled like cinnamon and fresh bread, the kind of place that had been feeding the neighborhood since before Marcus was born. He walked in at 6 a.m., after watching Elena's morning routine from across the street. The boys dropped at preschool, Elena returning to start her shift, exhaustion written in every line of her body. An older woman behind the counter looked up, flour dusting her apron. "Help you?" "I'm looking for Elena." The woman's eyes narrowed, protective instinct kicking in. She expecting you? No. Marcus kept his voice gentle, non-threatening. But it's important. Please. Something in his face must have convinced her, because she disappeared into the back and returned with Elena, who took one look at Marcus and went absolutely white. No, she whispered. No, you can't. You can't be here. I just want to talk. There's nothing to talk about. Elena backed toward the kitchen, panic rising. You need to leave, right now. The older woman, Lou probably, stepped between them. Elena, you want me to call someone? I'm not here to hurt her, Marcus said, raising his hands. Elena, please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Elena's eyes darted to the street, to the windows, like she expected armed men to crash through at any moment. Then she looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and whatever she saw in his face made her shoulders sag. Not here, she said quietly. There's a park 2 blocks west. Meet me there in 10 minutes. Alone. Marcus nodded and left before she could change her mind. The park was empty except for a few joggers and an old man feeding pigeons. Marcus sat on a bench facing the entrance, watching Elena approach with the defeated walk of someone heading to their own execution. She'd thrown a coat over her work uniform, her hair still pinned back, traces of flour on her hands. She sat on the far end of the bench, as much distance as possible between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Marcus said, very quietly, Are they mine? Elena closed her eyes. Yes. The confirmation detonated something in Marcus's chest, rage and grief and wonder all tangled together. How long have you known? I found out 2 weeks after I left. 2 weeks. Marcus's voice cracked despite his best efforts. And you didn't think I deserved to know I had sons? I couldn't tell you. Elena's hands twisted in her lap. I couldn't risk it. Risk what? Elena, I gave you everything. You gave me a cage. The words exploded out of her, raw and desperate. A beautiful, expensive cage that I couldn't escape. And then... She stopped, tears streaming down her face. Then what? Elena wiped her eyes roughly. 3 years ago, 2 men came to the apartment while you were in New York. They had guns, Marcus. They put me on my knees and told me exactly what would happen if I didn't disappear. They said your family had decided I was a liability. That I made you weak. That if I loved you, I'd leave before they had to make it permanent. Marcus's blood ran cold. What men? Describe them. I don't know. They wore masks. They didn't give names, but they knew things. Where I grew up, my mother's nursing home, details only someone close to you would know. Elena's voice shook. They said if I contacted you, if I tried to come back, they'd kill me and make it look like an accident. They had photos, Marcus. Pictures of me at the grocery store, at the gym, sleeping in our bed. They'd been watching for weeks. Marcus stood abruptly, pacing, his mind racing through possibilities. His organization had enemies, but a threat like that required inside knowledge. Someone close enough to access personal security details. Someone who knew Marcus well enough to predict his response. Someone in his own family. Why didn't you tell me? He demanded. I could have protected you. From your own people? Elena laughed bitterly. Marcus, you were building an empire. I was a social worker from the South Side who didn't fit into your world. Whoever sent those men was right. I made you vulnerable. So I left. I disappeared. And when I found out I was pregnant, her voice broke. I knew I could never tell you, because they'd be watching for that too. Marcus stared at her, processing betrayal layered on betrayal. 4 years, Elena. You've been raising my sons in poverty for 4 years because someone threatened you. I kept them safe. You kept them from me. Marcus's control finally cracked, the full weight of loss crushing down. Those are my sons, my blood. And I've missed everything. First words, first steps, 4 years of their lives because you decided I couldn't protect you. You couldn't. Elena stood now, meeting his fury with her own. I did what I had to do to keep them alive. And now you're here, and whoever sent those men will know, and my boys are in danger again because you couldn't just let us go. The raw pain in her voice stopped Marcus cold. He looked at Elena, really looked at her, and saw what 4 years of running had done. The dark circles under her eyes, the weight loss, the constant grinding fear that never quite went away. She'd sacrificed everything to protect their children from a threat she didn't even understand, and Marcus had been too blind to see it coming. "I'm going to find who did this," he said quietly, the words a promise and a threat. "And when I do, they're going to wish they'd never learned your name." "Marcus, no." "Yes." He stepped closer, dropping his voice. "Because those boys deserve better than this. They deserve safety, stability, a father who shows up. And you," his throat tightened, "you deserve better than running scared for 4 years." Elena shook her head, tears flowing freely now. "It's too late. The engagement party, Cassandra Halden. I saw the news, Marcus. You're building a different life now. Just let us disappear again. Please." "I can't." The words came out raw. "Elena, I can't unknow that I have sons. I can't walk away from them any more than I could walk away from you 3 years ago." He pulled out his phone, pulling up the surveillance photos. "Look at them. Really look. They're strong and smart and everything I didn't know I'd lost. Don't ask me to pretend they don't exist." Elena stared at the photos, her expression crumbling. "What are you going to do?" Marcus had been asking himself the same question since the moment those subway doors closed. Now, looking at the woman who'd carried his sons through hell alone, he knew there was only one answer. "I'm going to bring you home," he said. "All 3 of you. And whoever tries to stop me is going to learn exactly why people fear my name." Elena's apartment was exactly what Marcus had imagined from the surveillance photos. A cramped studio with water-stained walls and a radiator that clanked like it was dying. But what the photos hadn't captured was the warmth she'd somehow built into the poverty. Crayon drawings covered every available surface. A blanket fort took up half the living space. Pillows arranged like tiny fortresses. 2 twin beds pushed against opposite walls, each with carefully tucked sheets and stuffed animals standing guard. Marcus stood in the doorway, afraid to step inside and break something he couldn't fix. "They'll be back from preschool in 20 minutes, Elena said, her voice hollow. She hadn't stopped crying since the park, but the tears had turned quiet now. Resigned. "I don't know how to explain you. Tell them the truth." "Which truth? That their father's a crime lord who didn't know they existed? That's a great conversation for 4-year-olds. She sank onto the edge of one bed, exhaustion finally winning. "Marcus, this is insane. You can't just walk into their lives." "I'm not walking. I'm running." Marcus moved into the room, careful not to disturb the blanket fort. "Elena, whoever threatened you 3 years ago is still out there. The moment I found you, the clock started. They'll know I'm looking, and they'll act. Then leave. Go back to your engagement and your empire and let us disappear again." "No." The word came out harder than he intended. Marcus knelt in front of her, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I lost you once because I didn't see the threat coming. I'm not making that mistake again. My estate has security that would make the Pentagon jealous. Cameras, armed guards, safe rooms. If you and the boys are there, I can protect you." Elena laughed bitterly. "Your estate, where Cassandra Halden is probably picking out curtains and planning her perfect society wedding. Cassandra doesn't live there. She has her own place." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. "This isn't about her. This is about keeping you alive long enough to figure out who wants you dead. And then what? We just play house in your fortress while you marry someone else?" The question hit harder than Marcus expected. He stood, pacing the narrow space between beds. "I don't have all the answers yet, but I know this apartment isn't safe. Anyone could kick down that door." He gestured to the flimsy lock that wouldn't stop a determined teenager. "The fire escape is rusted through. There's one exit. If someone comes for you here, you'd have nowhere to run." Elena wrapped her arms around herself. "We've been fine for 4 years." "You've been lucky for 4 years. There's a difference." Marcus checked his watch. "Pack what matters. Clothes, toys, whatever the boys need to feel comfortable. Torres is outside with a car. We leave before they get back, pick them up from school together, and by tonight you'll be behind walls that actually mean something." "I can't just abandon my job. Lou's already been compensated. 3 months' salary, and I'll cover the bakery's lost revenue from your absence." Marcus had made the arrangements that morning, throwing money at problems the way he always did. "Elena, please, trust me one more time." She stared at him, this man who'd once promised her the world and delivered a prison instead. But the fear in her eyes wasn't about Marcus anymore. It was about the shadows that had chased her for 4 years, the faceless men who'd put guns to her head and threatened everything she loved. "Okay," she whispered. "But the boys, Marcus, if this scares them, if they think you're taking them away from me, I'm not the threat here." He said it as gently as he could manage. "I'm just trying to be what I should have been all along, their father." The preschool pickup was surreal. Marcus sat in the back seat of the Mercedes while Elena went inside, his heart hammering against his ribs like it was trying to escape. Through the tinted windows, he watched her emerge holding both boys' hands, their backpacks decorated with cartoon characters he didn't recognize. Torres opened the door. Elena helped the boys inside, and suddenly Marcus was 3 feet away from his sons in an enclosed space, breathing the same air, close enough to see that Evan had a Band-Aid on his knee and Milo's shoelaces were untied. Both children stared at him with identical expressions of cautious curiosity. "Boys," Elena said, her voice shaking slightly. "This is Marcus. He's a very old friend of mine. We're going to stay at his house for a little while." Milo, the bolder one, spoke first. "Why?" "Because our apartment needs some fixing," Elena lied smoothly. "And Marcus has a big house with lots of rooms." Evan, quieter, pressed against his mother's side. "Is he nice?" The question stabbed straight through Marcus's chest. He forced himself to smile, keeping his voice soft. "I try to be, especially to people I care about." "Do you have toys?" Milo asked, practical as any 4-year-old. "I don't, but we could get some. What kind do you like?" Milo's eyes lit up. "Dinosaurs, the big ones, and Evan likes trains." "Trains and dinosaurs," Marcus nodded seriously. "I think we can manage that." The drive to the estate took 40 minutes through rush-hour traffic. Elena kept both boys occupied with quiet conversation, pointing out landmarks while Marcus studied them in the rearview mirror. Milo chattered constantly, asking questions about everything they passed. Evan stayed silent, watching Marcus with those unsettling gray-green eyes that saw too much for someone so small. When they finally pulled through the estate gates, massive iron things that swung open with mechanical precision, both boys pressed their faces to the windows. "Whoa," Milo breathed. "You live in a castle." "Something like that," Marcus said. The house sprawled across 3 acres of manicured grounds, all sharp angles and modernist architecture designed to intimidate. He'd bought it 5 years ago because it made a statement. Now, watching his sons gape at the enormity of it, Marcus wondered what kind of statement he'd been trying to make. Torres pulled into the circular drive. Security personnel materialized from strategic positions, men in dark suits with earpieces, professional and armed. Elena's hand found her boys instantly, pulling them close. "It's okay," Marcus said quickly. "They work for me. Nobody here will hurt you." "You have bodyguards?" Milo's fear transformed into awe. "Like a superhero?" "More like a very cautious businessman." Marcus opened the door, stepping out first. "Come on, let me show you around." The house was exactly as he'd left it, sterile, perfect, empty of anything resembling life. But seeing it through the boys' eyes made Marcus realize how cold it felt. Their footsteps echoed on marble floors, their small voices bounced off high ceilings. When Evan whispered, "It's so big," he sounded more frightened than impressed. Elena met Marcus's eyes over their heads, her expression saying everything. "This is your world. Cold and huge and scary. This is why I ran." "The guest wing is upstairs," Marcus said, leading them to a staircase wide enough to drive a car up. 3 bedrooms, all connected. You'll have privacy and space. But when they reached the rooms, beautifully appointed, designer furniture, nothing a child could actually touch, both boys looked lost. Evan's lower lip trembled. Milo grabbed his mother's hand. "I want to go home," Evan said quietly. Elena knelt, gathering both boys close. "I know, baby. I know it's different, but we'll make it work. Okay? We'll make it feel like home." Marcus stood in the doorway, watching his family huddle together in a space that cost more than most people earned in a decade, and felt completely powerless. Money couldn't buy comfort. Security couldn't replace familiarity. He'd brought them to the safest place he knew, and his sons looked at him like he was the danger. "Give me an hour," he said abruptly. "Don't unpack. Just give me an hour." He left before Elena could question him, pulling out his phone as he took the stairs two at a time. Torres appeared at his elbow. "Boss, I need you to do something for me. Multiple things, actually, and they need to happen fast." 20 minutes later, Marcus's credit card had taken a serious hit. 40 minutes after that, delivery trucks started arriving. By the time he knocked on the guest room door, he had an army of people assembling purchases in the estate's main living room. Elena opened the door, wariness written across her face. "What's happening? I heard trucks." "Come downstairs, bring the boys." She studied him for a long moment, then turned back into the room. "Milo, Evan, come on. Marcus wants to show us something." The boys emerged cautiously, Milo holding his mother's hand, Evan clutching a stuffed elephant that had seen better days. Marcus led them downstairs, his heart pounding harder than it had during actual firefights. The living room had been transformed. Where cold minimalism had reigned, chaos now ruled. A massive dinosaur play set covered the coffee table. T-Rex, Triceratops, Stegosaurus, and a dozen others. A wooden train set snaked across the floor, complete with bridges and tunnels. Coloring books and crayons spilled across the couch. A reading corner had materialized in one corner, beanbag chairs and children's books stacked in colorful towers. Both boys froze in the doorway, their mouths forming perfect O's of shock. "I know it's not home," Marcus said quietly, "but I thought maybe it could be less scary if there were things here that belonged to you." Milo broke first, sprinting toward the dinosaurs with a shriek of pure joy. Evan followed more slowly, drawn to the trains like they were magnetic. Within seconds, both boys were on the floor, absorbed in play, the fear temporarily forgotten. Elena's hand covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face again. "Marcus!" "It's not enough. I know it's not enough." He watched his sons play, memorizing every gesture, every laugh. "But I'm trying. I don't know how to be a father yet, but I'm trying." She turned to him, and for the first time since the subway platform, her expression softened. "They'll need dinner soon, and baths, and a bedtime routine. They're very particular about bedtime." "Then teach me." Marcus met her eyes. "Teach me what I missed." What? Dinner was a revelation. Marcus had hosted senators and crime bosses at the formal dining table, negotiated deals over imported wine and artisan cuisine. But sitting at the kitchen island eating chicken nuggets with two 4-year-olds taught him more about vulnerability than a decade in the underworld. Milo told stories between bites, elaborate tales about preschool drama and playground politics. Evan ate slowly, still watching Marcus with those careful eyes, but he'd relaxed enough to ask for ketchup without whispering. Elena sat between them, orchestrating the chaos with practiced ease, cutting food, wiping faces, preventing the inevitable food fight before it started. "So you're rich?" Milo asked suddenly, apropos of nothing. Marcus nearly choked on his water. "I have money. Yes." "How much money?" "Milo." Elena's voice carried a warning. "That's not polite." "But I want to know. Is he richer than Santa?" Despite everything, the threats, the fear, the impossible situation they'd stumbled into, Marcus laughed. Actually laughed, the sound rusty from disuse. "Probably not. Santa has a pretty good operation going." "Do you have elves?" "No elves, just people who work for me." "Are they magic?" "Definitely not magic." Milo processed this, then returned to his nuggets, satisfied. But Evan spoke up, his voice small but clear. "Why are we really here?" The question silenced the room. Elena's hand froze halfway to Evan's cup. Marcus set down his fork carefully, trying to figure out how to explain danger to a 4-year-old without creating nightmares. "Because I want to get to know you," he said finally. "Both of you. And because your mom and I need to talk about some grown-up things, and it's easier to do that here." "Are you going to be our dad?" The directness nearly destroyed Marcus. He looked at Elena, who'd gone pale, then back at Evan. "Would you want that?" Evan shrugged, the gesture heartbreakingly casual. "Maybe, if you're nice to Mom." "I'm going to try very hard to be nice to your mom." "Okay." Evan went back to his nuggets like he hadn't just rewired Marcus's entire world. Bath time happened in one of the guest bathrooms, a space bigger than Elena's entire apartment. Marcus watched from the doorway as she wrangled both boys into the tub, their laughter echoing off marble tile. She'd done this alone for 4 years, the feeding and bathing and bedtime stories, while Marcus built his empire on the other side of the city, never knowing what he was missing. "You can come in," Elena said without turning around. "They won't bite." Marcus stepped inside, feeling massively out of his depth. "What can I do?" "Evan needs his hair washed. He hates it. You have to be gentle." She handed him a bottle of No Tears shampoo. "And watch out, because Milo likes to splash." Washing his son's hair turned out to be simultaneously the simplest and most complicated thing Marcus had ever done. Evan's hair was fine and soft, so much like Marcus's own childhood hair that it hurt. The boy squirmed and complained, but submitted, trusting this stranger with something as intimate as gentle hands on his head. "You're pretty good at this," Milo announced, then promptly proved Elena's warning by sending a tidal wave across the bathroom. By the time both boys were clean and wrapped in towels, Marcus was soaked and exhausted and happier than he'd been in years. They migrated to the bedroom, where Elena produced pajamas from their hastily packed bags, mismatched sets with superhero prints and worn elastic. "Story time," Milo demanded, climbing into one of the beds. "Do you have books?" Evan asked Marcus. "We bought some downstairs. I'll go get them." Marcus headed for the door, but Elena's hand on his arm stopped him. "Let me do this part," she said softly. "They need normal tonight, familiar." Marcus nodded and retreated to the hallway, but he didn't go far. He stood just outside the door, listening to Elena read a story about a train who thought he couldn't, her voice rising and falling with practiced drama. The boys interrupted constantly with questions and commentary, and Elena answered each one patiently, never rushing, never dismissing. This was what he'd stolen from her. Not the luxury or the safety. Those were meaningless. He'd stolen the right to do this in peace, without fear, without looking over her shoulder for men with guns. When the story ended and Elena sang a soft lullaby Marcus didn't recognize, something in his chest cracked open. He'd spent a decade building walls between himself and feelings, turning every emotion into strategy, every vulnerability into weakness. But standing in a hallway listening to his sons fall asleep, Marcus felt every single wall crumble. Elena emerged 15 minutes later, closing the door quietly. She found Marcus still standing there, his face wet with tears he didn't remember crying. "They're asleep," she whispered. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. "Marcus." She touched his arm, her expression complex with pity and understanding. "You can't fall apart yet. We still have too much to figure out." "I know." He wiped his face roughly. "I know, They're perfect, Elena. They're perfect, and I didn't know they existed, and someone threatened you to keep it that way. Come on." She tugged him toward the stairs. "Let's talk somewhere they won't hear." They ended up in Marcus's office, a room Elena had never seen when they were together. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the grounds, currently dark except for security lights that turned the landscape into a checkerboard of shadow and illumination. Marcus poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a crystal decanter, handed one to Elena, and sank into the chair behind his desk like all his strings had been cut. Elena sat across from him, studying the room with an expression he couldn't read. "This is where you run everything." "Yes." "The crime, the money, all of it." "Yes." She took a long drink. "I knew what you were when we met. It's not like you hid it, but being with you, I could pretend sometimes that you were just a businessman with questionable associates, that the danger wasn't real. And then it became real. Very real." Elena set down her glass. "The men who came, they were professionals, Marcus, not street thugs. They moved like soldiers, talked like they'd done this before. And they knew things they shouldn't have known. Details about your schedule, your security rotation, even which nights you didn't sleep at home." Marcus leaned forward. "I need you to remember everything. Every word they said, every detail you noticed. If I'm going to find them, they said they were sent by someone who cared about your future." Elena's voice dropped. "They said I was a distraction you couldn't afford, that you were on the verge of something big, bigger than I could understand, and my presence was making you soft, making you vulnerable to people who'd use me against you. That's bullshit. I never... They had proof, Marcus. Photos of us together in public, articles about you in the business section with me in the background. They showed me surveillance footage of a meeting where someone, I couldn't see who, was arguing that you'd become compromised, that you were making emotional decisions instead of strategic ones. Elena's hands trembled around her glass. They said if I really loved you, I'd disappear before your enemies figured out how to use me. That stain would get me killed and you destroyed. Marcus's mind raced through possibilities. 3 years of deals and alliances and betrayals. Back then, he'd been negotiating a massive territory expansion, pushing into markets controlled by old guard families who didn't appreciate his modern methods. He'd made enemies. But internal betrayal, someone close enough to access security footage and intimate details that narrowed the field considerably. My uncle, he said slowly. Vincent. He was pushing hard for me to step back from field operations, said I was too visible. We fought about it constantly. The men never used names, but one of them, Elena closed her eyes, forcing the memory. One of them had an accent, not strong but noticeable. Eastern European, maybe Russian. Marcus's blood went cold. 3 years ago, he'd been working with the Constantine family, Russian immigrants who controlled shipping on the waterfront. Vincent had brought them in, vouched for their reliability. The partnership had been profitable, but uneasy, built on mutual suspicion and carefully worded contracts. Nikolai Constantine, Marcus breathed. He had men who fit that description. Soldiers from the old country, trained in ways American criminals never are. You think your uncle hired Russian mobsters to threaten me? I think my uncle saw an opportunity to remove what he considered a liability and used outside resources to do it. Marcus stood, pacing. He couldn't risk me finding out, so he contracted it out, made it look like it came from outside, from enemies who wanted leverage, and you... He turned to Elena. You did exactly what they wanted. You ran, and I never questioned why because I thought you'd just had enough. I left a note. Elena's voice was barely audible. Did you never wonder why it was typed instead of handwritten? I wanted to leave something, some clue, but they watched me write it, made me say exactly what they told me to say. Marcus remembered the note, brief, devastating, completely out of character for the woman who left handwritten grocery lists because she liked the personal touch. He'd been too destroyed to question the medium, only the message. I'm sorry, he said, for not seeing it, for not protecting you. You didn't know. I should have known. Marcus returned to his desk, pulling out a secure phone. Vincent and Nikolai. If they did this, they're going to pay for every single day you spent running. Marcus, wait. Elena stood, alarm crossing her face. If you go after them now, they'll know you found us. They'll know the boys exist. You could be putting them in more danger. They're already in danger. The moment I found you, the clock started. These people aren't going to just let this slide. Marcus dialed Torres. But I'm not going in blind this time. I'm going to get proof, build a case, and then I'm going to dismantle everyone who thought they could take you from me. And Torres answered on the first ring. Boss? I need deep background on 2 people. Vincent Vale and Nikolai Constantine, going back 3 years. Financial records, communications, meeting logs, everything. I want to know if they so much as shared a taxi. Marcus paused. And I need it quiet. If either of them gets wind that I'm looking, they'll cover their tracks. On it. Anything else? Double the security on the estate. No one in or out without my personal approval. And put surveillance on both targets. I want to know where they are and who they're talking to at all times. He hung up and found Elena watching him with an expression caught between fear and something else. Admiration, maybe. Or recognition of the man she'd once loved before it all went wrong. This is what you do, she said softly, when someone threatens what's yours. Yes. And what about Cassandra? Your engagement? The legitimate life you were building? Marcus thought about the question seriously, because Elena deserved honesty. Cassandra was always a business arrangement, a way to clean money and buy respectability. I never pretended it was more than that. She seems to think it's more. Then she's deluding herself. Marcus met Elena's eyes. I haven't loved anyone since you left. I told myself it was better that way, safer, cleaner, more strategic. And then I saw you yesterday, and every wall I'd built just collapsed. Elena looked away, but not before he saw the tears. We can't just pick up where we left off, Marcus. Too much has happened. Those boys upstairs, they need stability, not parents who barely know each other anymore. So we start over, clean slate, no assumptions, no expectations. Marcus spread his hands. Stay here while we figure out who threatened you. Let me get to know our sons. And when the danger's gone, when everyone who tried to take you away is neutralized, then we decide what happens next. Together. And if I decide to leave again? The question hurt, but Marcus answered honestly. Then I'll make sure you have resources to disappear properly this time. Money, security, new identities if you need them. But the boys, his voice roughened. I can't lose them again, Elena. I'll stay out of your life if that's what you want, but I need to be part of theirs. Elena wiped her eyes, nodding slowly. Okay, we can try. But Marcus, if this gets dangerous, if those men come back, or if staying here puts the boys at risk, then we run together this time, Marcus promised. No more facing it alone. Whatever happens, we handle it as a team. She studied him for a long moment, then extended her hand across the desk. Deal. Marcus took her hand, and for the first time in 3 years, hope flickered in his chest like a candle refusing to die. They had a long way to go. Proof to find, enemies to confront, a family to rebuild from broken pieces. But sitting in his office with Elena's hand in his, Marcus felt something he'd thought was lost forever. Purpose beyond power, protection beyond control. A reason to fight that had nothing to do with empire and everything to do with the two boys sleeping upstairs, dreaming innocent dreams in a fortress built by fear. He wouldn't let those dreams turn into nightmares. Whatever it took, whoever he had to destroy, Marcus would make sure his sons grew up safe, even if it meant burning his whole world down to do it. The DNA results arrived 3 days later in a manila envelope that weighed nothing and changed everything. Marcus sat alone in his office at dawn, staring at the official letterhead that confirmed what his heart already knew, 99.9% probability of paternity for both Milo Cross and Evan Cross. The numbers blurred as he read them again, scientific certainty transforming ghosts into flesh and blood. He had sons, legal, biological, undeniable sons. Marcus pressed his palms against his eyes, overwhelmed by the weight of it. Downstairs, he could hear Elena moving around the kitchen, the soft murmur of her voice as she helped the boys with breakfast. In 3 days, they'd developed routines. Early mornings with cartoons, Elena teaching them to set the table while Marcus watched from doorways like an intruder in his own house, afraid to break the fragile peace they'd built. But peace was a luxury Marcus couldn't afford. Torres had been digging into Vincent and Nikolai, uncovering connections that went deeper than Marcus had imagined. His uncle hadn't just threatened Elena, he'd built an entire shadow operation designed to control Marcus's decisions, using fear and manipulation to steer the empire in directions that benefited Vincent's own ambitions. The evidence was mounting, but it wasn't enough yet. Marcus needed something ironclad, something that would bury Vincent so completely he'd never threaten Elena again. And that meant playing a dangerous game, pretending ignorance while gathering ammunition. His phone buzzed. Cassandra. The fourth call this week that Marcus had ignored, letting each one go to voicemail while he prioritized the family she didn't know existed. But avoidance had limits, and Cassandra Halden wasn't the type to be put off indefinitely. He answered, Cassandra. Finally, her voice dripped icicles. I was beginning to think you'd fallen off the face of the earth, or decided the engagement was optional. I've been dealing with this situation I mentioned. The mysterious situation that's more important than our arrangement. A pause, calculating. Marcus, my father is losing patience. We had a deal. You show up, play the devoted fiancé, and we integrate our operations. But you've missed 3 events this week. People are starting to talk. Marcus rubbed his temples, exhaustion making his skull ache. I understand, and I'll make it right, but I need more time. You don't have more time. Cassandra's tone shifted, and Marcus heard the steel underneath. There's a gala tomorrow night at the Waldorf. Major donors, press coverage, the works. You'll be there. You'll be charming. and you'll put an end to speculation that this engagement is anything less than solid, non-negotiable. Cassandra, or we're done, Marcus. My father and I will take our legitimacy elsewhere, and you can explain to your investors why the Halden merger fell apart. She let the threat hang. Your choice. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. Don't be late. She disconnected before Marcus could respond. He sat in the silence of his office, trapped between two worlds that were rapidly colliding. The gala meant leaving the estate, leaving Elena and the boys vulnerable even with security in place. But refusing meant losing the cover story that kept Cassandra from digging into why Marcus had suddenly become unreachable. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Elena stood in the doorway, still in pajamas, her hair a mess from sleep. She'd been staying in the guest room with the boys, maintaining careful distance even as they navigated shared space. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep." Marcus gestured to the chair across from him. DNA results came back. Official confirmation. Elena crossed to the desk, reading over his shoulder. Her hand found his without thought, fingers intertwining as they stared at scientific proof of what they'd created together. "How do you feel?" "Terrified. Angry. Grateful." Marcus turned his hand over, palm against palm. "All of it at once." "How do you feel?" "Like maybe we can stop running." She sank into the chair, still holding his hand across the desk. "Torres told me about the investigation. Vincent and the Russian, you really think they're the ones?" "I know they are. I just need proof solid enough that they can't wriggle free." Marcus explained the paper trail Torres had uncovered. Shell companies, encrypted communications, financial transfers that suggested planning and coordination. "But it's all circumstantial. I need something definitive." "What happens when you get it?" Marcus met her eyes. "I make sure they never threaten you again, whatever that takes." Elena nodded slowly, understanding the implications. She'd known what Marcus was capable of when they met, but knowing and witnessing were different things. "The boys asked about you this morning, wanted to know if you'd have breakfast with us." "I will." Marcus stood, still holding her hand. "But I need to tell you something first. Cassandra's demanding I attend a gala tomorrow night. High profile, lots of press. If I don't show, the engagement falls apart and she starts asking questions I can't answer." "So go." Elena pulled her hand back, her expression closing off. "Play your part. I understand how this works." "Elena, I'm serious, Marcus. We're not together. You don't owe me explanations about your fiancé." She stood, wrapping her arms around herself. "Just make sure security stays tight while you're gone. That's all I care about." The dismissal stung more than it should have. Marcus wanted to argue, to explain that Cassandra meant nothing, that every moment at the gala would be torture. But Elena was already walking away, her shoulders rigid with the same pride that had helped her survive 4 years alone. Breakfast was awkward, Marcus trying to act normal while tension radiated between him and Elena. But the boys either didn't notice or didn't care. Milo chattering about the dinosaur documentary they'd watched, while Evan carefully built a tower from his toast pieces. "Can we go outside?" Milo asked, bouncing in his chair. "There's so much space and we never get to play outside at the old apartment." Elena glanced at Marcus, uncertainty in her eyes. The estate grounds were secure, but exposure carried risks. Marcus made the decision quickly. "After breakfast, we'll go out. But you stay where I can see you, and if any of the security people tell you something, you listen. Deal?" Both boys nodded enthusiastically, already planning their adventures. When they finished eating, Marcus led them through the French doors to the back terrace, Elena trailing behind with visible nervousness. The grounds stretched out like a private park, manicured lawns, strategic trees, a walking path that circled the perimeter. Milo took off running immediately, his laughter carrying across the grass. Evan followed more cautiously, stopping every few feet to examine flowers or interesting rocks. Marcus stayed close, hyper-aware of sight lines and security positions, his body tensing at every distant sound. "You're terrifying them," Elena murmured, watching Evan glance back nervously. "Relax. Let them be kids." "I'm trying." But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of exposure, the knowledge that somewhere out there, Vincent and Nikolai were making their own plans. His phone buzzed. "Torres, with an update. Marcus stepped away to take the call, keeping the boys in his peripheral vision. Talk to me. We caught something. Nikolai met with Vincent last night at a restaurant in Greektown. The conversation was brief, but our lip reader got fragments. They mentioned Elena's name and the boys. Marcus's blood turned to ice. They know. Seems likely. Nikolai's increased his security detail, and Vincent's been making calls to people we haven't identified yet. They're planning something, boss. We just don't know what. Double security again. I want eyes on both of them every second. And I want contingency plans. If they move on the estate, I need to know before they're within a mile of this property. Marcus watched Milo try to climb a tree while Evan offered advice from the ground. These kids don't get caught in the crossfire. Whatever it takes. Understood. There's something else. Torres hesitated. We traced some of Nikolai's communications. He's been in contact with someone in Child Protective Services. Multiple calls over the past week. The implications hit Marcus like a freight train. They're going to use the law. Make it official. That'd be my guess? Paint you as a dangerous criminal, Elena as an unfit mother, the kids as endangered. Get the state involved, take the boys into protective custody, and suddenly you're fighting the system instead of just Vincent and Nikolai. Marcus's mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. If CPS got involved, if they took the boys into state care while investigating the claims, Marcus would have to fight through bureaucracy and court proceedings. And during that time, Vincent could make the boys disappear. Foster care had holes, and money could grease any wheel. I need those boys legally mine, Marcus said. Can we expedite paternity recognition? Get my name on their birth certificates? That takes time, boss. Court filings, hearings, Elena's consent. Then we don't have time. Marcus made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. Get me a lawyer. The best family attorney money can buy. I want emergency custody arrangements drawn up, with Elena's cooperation. If the state comes for them, I want legal standing to fight back. He hung up and found Elena watching him, concern written across her face. What happened? Marcus explained in low tones, careful to keep his voice calm despite the panic churning in his gut. Elena listened without interrupting, her face going progressively paler. They're going to take my babies, she whispered when he finished. They're going to use the law to steal them. Not if I have anything to say about it. Marcus gripped her shoulders. But I need you to trust me. Completely. Can you do that? Elena searched his face, and whatever she saw there made her nod. What do you need? Your cooperation with emergency custody arrangements. Joint legal guardianship filed immediately. It means giving me parental rights, but it also means I can fight for them legally if CPS shows up. Marcus forced himself to add, and if you're not comfortable with that, if you don't trust me that far, tell me now. I'll find another way. There is no other way. Elena glanced at the boys, still playing in oblivious innocence. Do it. File whatever you need to file. Just keep them safe. The lawyer arrived that afternoon, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in high-stakes family law and knew better than to ask too many questions about Marcus's business. She spread paperwork across the dining table while Elena signed document after document, her hand shaking slightly with each signature. This establishes joint legal custody, Patricia explained, tapping one form. Both parents have equal say in decisions regarding the children. It also creates a paper trail showing Marcus as the biological father with Elena's acknowledgement and cooperation. How fast can you file? Marcus asked. I can have it expedited. 48 hours? Maybe less if I call in favors. Patricia shuffled papers. But Mr. Vale, you should understand, if Child Protective Services opens an investigation, these documents help but don't guarantee anything. They'll look at living situations, background checks, fitness evaluations. My background won't pass their tests. No, it probably won't. Patricia met his eyes with the bluntness Marcus had hired her for. But Ms. Cross's will. If we can demonstrate that the children are safe, healthy, and thriving in a stable environment with their mother present, that carries weight. The fact that you have resources to provide security and opportunities also helps. Elena spoke up, her voice steady despite the fear underneath. What happens if they take the boys anyway? What are our options? Emergency appeals, Custody hearings, potentially federal court if we can demonstrate the state action is improper. Patricia's expression softened slightly. But I'll be honest, the system is designed to protect children, even when it gets it wrong. Fighting CPS is like fighting the ocean. You can win, but it takes time and resources most people don't have. We have resources, Marcus said flatly, whatever it costs. The rest of the day passed in a blur of legal preparation and security briefings. Marcus had the estate swept again for vulnerabilities, added personnel to the perimeter, and installed panic buttons in every room Elena and the boys might occupy. He moved through the preparations with mechanical efficiency, his mind already gaming out scenarios. That night, after the boys were asleep, Marcus found Elena in the guest room staring out the window at the grounds. Security lights cast long shadows across the lawn, turning the beautiful space into something more ominous. "I keep thinking about the apartment," she said without turning. "It was small and the heat didn't work great, but it was ours, safe, because nobody knew we were there, and now," she gestured at the opulence surrounding them, "now we're in a fortress that feels like a target." Marcus leaned against the doorframe. "I can move you somewhere else. A safe house, different city, new identities. It's not too late to run. And spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, waiting for them to find us again?" Elena turned, her eyes fierce despite the tears. "No, I'm tired of running, Marcus. I'm tired of being afraid. If they're coming, let them come. At least here we have a chance to fight back." "You sound like me." "Maybe I learned from the best." She moved closer, studying his face in the dim light. "Tomorrow night, when you're at the gala with her, it doesn't mean anything." "I know, but it still hurts." Elena touched his cheek, the gesture achingly familiar. "We were good once, weren't we? Before everything went wrong?" "We were perfect." Marcus caught her hand, pressing it against his face. "And we could be again, if we survive this." They stood like that for a long moment, caught between past and future, until Elena pulled away. "Get some sleep. You'll need your strength for tomorrow." Marcus left her there, but sleep was impossible. He spent the night in his office reviewing security footage, checking reports, planning for threats that felt inevitable. When dawn finally broke, he was exhausted and wired, running on coffee and adrenaline. The day crawled by in painful slowness. Marcus spent the morning with the boys, playing dinosaurs and trains, memorizing their laughs in case this was the last time. Milo showed him elaborate stories acted out with plastic figures, while Evan quietly built train tracks that wound through the entire living room. "You're sad," Evan observed at one point, those knowing eyes too perceptive. "Why are you sad?" Marcus knelt to his level. "Just thinking about grown-up stuff, but I'm happy when I'm with you. Always." "Good." Evan patted his shoulder with the grave authority of a 4-year-old. "Being sad is no fun." That afternoon, Marcus prepared for the gala with the enthusiasm of someone dressing for their own execution. The tuxedo felt like armor, expensive and uncomfortable. Elena watched from the bedroom doorway as he struggled with the bow tie, finally crossing to fix it herself. "There," she said, smoothing his lapels. "Now you look like someone who belongs in that world." "I don't belong there. I belong here." Marcus caught her hands. "If anything happens while I'm gone, anything at all, Torres has instructions to get you out. There's a car ready, documents prepared, cash in the safe. Don't hesitate. Don't wait for me. Just run." "Marcus, promise me, Elena, if it goes wrong, you save our sons first and worry about me later." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "I promise. But you come back. Those boys need their father." The words nearly broke him. Marcus pulled her close, breathing in her scent, memorizing the feel of her in his arms. Then he forced himself to let go, to walk away while he still could. The drive to the Waldorf was silent, Torres at the wheel, Marcus staring out at the city lights and wondering if he'd ever see his sons again. The gala was already in full swing when they arrived. String quartets and champagne fountains, and Chicago's elite mingling in designer gowns and $1,000 suits. Cassandra found him immediately, resplendent in emerald silk that matched her calculating eyes. "There you are. I was starting to think you'd stand me up again." "I gave you my word." Marcus took her offered arm, playing the part he'd agreed to play. So you did. Cassandra steered him into the crowd, smiling for cameras, introducing him to people whose names Marcus forgot immediately. You look terrible, by the way. Have you slept at all this week? Business has been complicated. Everything with you is complicated. She lowered her voice as they moved through the ballroom. My father wants to move up the wedding. He thinks a grand gesture will solidify investor confidence. Marcus's attention sharpened. How soon? 2 weeks. Big ceremony, televised coverage, the works. He's already talking to venues. Cassandra studied his face. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Legitimacy, access to our financial networks, a clean slate. Or has something changed? Before Marcus could answer, his phone buzzed with an emergency alert from Torres. He pulled it out despite Cassandra's disapproving look, and the message turned his blood to ice. SWAT mobilizing to estate. Child services en route. Multiple units. They're coming now. I have to go. Marcus was already moving, ignoring Cassandra's protests. Marcus, what? Stay here. Smile for the cameras. This has nothing to do with you. He was running now, Torres appearing at his side as they fought through the crowd toward the exit. Behind them, Cassandra's voice rose above the music. Marcus Vale, if you walk out of here, we're done. But Marcus was already gone, his phone pressed to his ear as he called the estate, praying Elena would answer, praying he wasn't too late. The line clicked, Elena's voice breathless and terrified. Marcus, they're at the gate. Armed police, official vehicles. They're saying they have a warrant to take the boys for endangerment and... Her voice broke. They're saying you kidnapped them. Listen to me. Marcus threw himself into the Mercedes, Torres already accelerating before the door closed. Do not let them take those boys without you present. You're their mother. You have rights. Stay calm, be cooperative, but do not let them separate you. There are so many of them, Marcus. SWAT teams, child services... It looks like a raid. Static cut across the line. Marcus heard shouting in the background, heard Elena crying, heard one of the boys, Milo, he thought, asking what was happening. Then a new voice, cold and professional. Mr. Vale, this is Detective Morrison, Chicago PD. We have a warrant for the protective custody of Milo and Evan Cross based on credible reports of endangerment and possible kidnapping. Ms. Cross is cooperating. I suggest you do the same. Those are my sons, Marcus growled. I have legal documentation, which we'll review through proper channels. But right now, those children are coming into state custody for their own safety. If you interfere, you'll be arrested for obstruction. A pause. Ms. Cross has agreed to accompany the children to ensure their well-being. I suggest you contact your attorney and work through the system. The line went dead. Marcus sat in the speeding car, his world imploding around him. Vincent had made his move using law enforcement as a weapon, turning Marcus's own protective instincts into evidence of danger. The boys were gone. Elena was gone. And somewhere, his uncle was probably laughing. Torres's voice cut through the rage. Boss, we're 10 minutes out. What do you want to do? Marcus stared at his phone, at the emergency protocols he'd put in place, at the resources he'd assembled to protect his family. Then he thought about Milo's laugh, and Evan's careful observations, and Elena's fierce determination to keep them safe. We fight, he said quietly. We fight with everything we have. Get Patricia on the phone, get our investigators mobilized, and find out exactly where they're taking my family. And Cassandra, the engagement? Marcus thought about the gala, the televised wedding, the clean slate he'd been building. Then he made the choice that would burn it all down. Cassandra can go to hell. The only thing that matters now is getting my sons back. The estate looked like a war zone when Marcus arrived. Police vehicles still lined the circular drive, their lights painting everything in strobing red and blue. SWAT officers were loading equipment into vans while plainclothes detectives conferred in tight clusters, their body language suggesting the raid had gone exactly as planned. Marcus's home, the fortress he'd built to protect his family, had been breached by men with badges and warrants, and there was nothing his money or muscle could do about it. Torres parked at a distance, keeping the Mercedes out of direct sight. Boss, if you go in there now, they'll arrest you. Let me talk to them first, find out what... No! Marcus was already out of the car, striding toward the nearest officer with the controlled fury of a man barely holding himself together. Where are they? Where did you take them? The officer, young and nervous, took a step back. Sir, I'm going to need you to calm down. I'm calm. I'm asking a simple question. Where's my family? Detective Morrison's inside. He can answer your questions. The officer gestured toward the open front door, clearly relieved to pass the problem along. Marcus found Morrison in the living room, surveying the space where just that morning Milo and Evan had been playing with their dinosaurs. The toys were still scattered across the floor, abandoned mid-game when armed strangers had descended. The detective was a stocky man in his 50s with the weary eyes of someone who'd seen too much human ugliness to be shocked by anything. Mr. Vale? Morrison didn't offer his hand. Your attorney's been calling, told her you'd be in touch. Where are my sons? They've been transported to a secure facility for evaluation. Ms. Cross accompanied them voluntarily to minimize trauma. Morrison pulled out a notepad, flipping to marked pages. We received credible reports that 2 minor children were being held at this address against their will, in the custody of a known criminal with documented ties to organized crime. Given the potential for danger, we moved quickly. Those reports are lies. Marcus forced his voice level, knowing that losing control would only make things worse. I'm their biological father. Elena Cross is their mother. We have legal documentation establishing custody that was filed 2 days ago. Documentation we're aware of. Morrison met his eyes. We're also aware that Ms. Cross fled from you 3 years ago and has been living under the radar ever since, that she showed visible fear when approached by our officers, that these children have no record of prenatal care, no medical history tied to your name, nothing suggesting you've been part of their lives until very recently. Because someone threatened her. Marcus pulled out his phone, bringing up the files Torres had compiled. I have evidence of a conspiracy to force Elena Cross to leave 3 years ago. Threats made by associates of my uncle Vincent Vale and a Russian national named Nikolai Konstantin. They're trying to use the law to cover up their crimes. Morrison glanced at the phone, unimpressed. That's a nice story, Mr. Vale, but right now all I see is a crime boss who suddenly produces 2 children and claims they're his. The timing's awfully convenient, wouldn't you say? Especially with your engagement to Cassandra Halden falling apart. The implication hit Marcus like a slap. They thought he was using the boys as leverage, as some kind of bargaining chip or publicity stunt. This has nothing to do with Cassandra, doesn't it? From where I'm standing, you've got a reputation problem. The Haldens were giving you legitimacy, and now that's crumbling. 2 sympathetic kids and a sob story about separated lovers could be exactly the image rehabilitation you need. You're wrong. Marcus's hands clenched at his sides, nails biting into palms. Those are my sons. I didn't know they existed until a week ago, and the only thing I care about is keeping them safe from the people who threatened their mother. Then you won't mind if the state does its due diligence. Morrison closed his notepad. We'll evaluate the children, interview Ms. Cross extensively, and investigate your claims about these alleged threats. If everything checks out, you'll get them back through proper channels. Until then, they stay in protective custody. For how long? As long as it takes. Could be days, could be weeks. Depends on what we find. Morrison moved toward the door, clearly done with the conversation. My advice? Get a good lawyer and cooperate fully. Making this difficult will only hurt your case. He left Marcus standing in the living room surrounded by abandoned toys, each plastic dinosaur and wooden train a reminder of what had been stolen. Torres appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. Patricia's on her way. She says to not talk to anyone without her present. Torres hesitated. Boss, there's something else. Cassandra's making statements to the press. She's telling them the engagement's off, that you've been unstable and erratic, that she has concerns about your judgment. Of course she was. Cassandra Halden didn't accept humiliation gracefully, and Marcus walking out of the gala had been a very public rejection. Now she was protecting her reputation by painting him as the problem, which would only feed the narrative Morrison was building. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, just 2 words. Checkmate, Vincent. It had to be. His uncle had orchestrated this perfectly, used the law to take the boys, positioned Marcus as a dangerous criminal, and eliminated any clean exit from the situation. Now Marcus was trapped between impossible choices. Fight the system and prove their claims right, or submit to their process and pray they'd give his sons back. Get me everything we have on Vincent and Nikolai, Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. every communication, every financial record, every piece of evidence that ties them to the threats against Elena. I want it compiled, verified, and ready to present. To who? Morrison won't listen, and the courts will take weeks to review. Not the courts, the press. Marcus turned to Torres, a plan forming through the rage. If Vincent wants to play with public opinion, we'll give him a war he's not prepared for. But we need something undeniable first. Something so damning he can't spin his way out. Patricia Chen arrived an hour later, her expression grim. She spread files across Marcus's desk, each one documenting a different aspect of the disaster they were facing. The state has a strong case, she said without preamble. On paper, you look exactly like what they're claiming, a criminal trying to use children for legitimacy. The fact that Elena went with them voluntarily suggests she feels unsafe in your custody. She went to protect the boys, not because she's afraid of me. I believe you, but convincing a judge is different. Patricia pulled out another document. The facility where they're being held is secure but not harsh, more like a group home than a detention center. Elena is allowed to stay with them for now, which is good. It means the boys aren't traumatized by separation. For now. Marcus lit a cigarette despite Patricia's disapproving look. What happens when Vincent makes his next move? What next move? He didn't go to all this trouble just to get them into state custody. He wants them gone, truly gone. Foster care has cracks, Patricia. People disappear. Records get lost. With the right money in the right hands, 2 boys could vanish into the system. Patricia paled. You think he'd go that far? I think he's already planning it. Marcus pulled up the unknown text, showing her the message. This isn't about custody. It's about erasing a mistake. Vincent saw Elena as a threat 3 years ago, and now the boys are an even bigger problem. Dead men tell no tales, but live sons can inherit empires. The implication settled like lead. Patricia sat back, processing. If you're right, we need to move fast. But going public without proof will make you look paranoid. We need something concrete that ties Vincent to the threats and to this custody action. Torres is working on it. Work faster. Patricia stood, gathering her files. I'll file emergency motions, request expedited hearings, and push for supervised visitation rights. But Marcus, you need to understand the system is designed to be slow. Even with evidence, getting those boys back could take months. We don't have months. Then find me something explosive, something that forces everyone's hand. Patricia headed for the door, then paused. And stay away from the facility. Don't try to see them. Don't send messages. Don't do anything that could be construed as intimidation or interference. Right now you're being watched for any excuse to make this worse. After she left, Marcus sat in the darkness of his office, staring at his phone. He pulled up the photos Torres had taken during surveillance. Elena with the boys in the park, Milo's gap-toothed grin, Evan's serious expression as he studied a leaf. 1 week. He'd had 1 week with his sons, and now they were gone. His phone rang. An encrypted line, one of the numbers he kept for sensitive contacts. Marcus answered without checking the ID. Marcus Vale. The voice was Russian-accented, smooth as poisoned honey. Nikolai Konstantin. I hear you're having family troubles. Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. You son of a bitch. Such language. I thought we were business associates. Nikolai laughed, the sound grating. Let me be clear about something. Those children are a complication neither Vincent nor I can afford. Your uncle wants them gone quietly, but I'm less patient. If they happen to disappear from state custody, if some tragic accident occurs, well, these things happen in an imperfect system. Touch them, and I'll bury you so deep they'll never find the pieces. Empty threats from a man who can't even protect his own blood. Nikolai's voice hardened. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to back away from this situation. Stop investigating. Stop making noise. Stop being a problem. In exchange, the boys will simply fade into foster care. Alive, healthy, but lost to you forever. It's more mercy than you deserve. And if I refuse? Then accidents happen. Ms. Cross is very devoted to those children. It would be such a shame if she got caught in the crossfire of a facility incident. These places have security problems, you know. Gang violence, fires, all sorts of tragic possibilities. The threat was explicit enough to make Marcus's vision blur with rage. I'm going to end you, Nikolai. You and Vincent both. And when I do, it won't be quick. Big words from a man who's already lost. Nikolai disconnected. Marcus sat frozen, his mind racing through scenarios, each one worse than the last. Vincent and Nikolai weren't bluffing. They'd proven their willingness to destroy lives, and now they had Elena and the boys in a facility Marcus couldn't access, surrounded by state employees who thought they were protecting children from a monster. Torres burst into the office without knocking, laptop in hand. Boss, we got something. You need to see this now. He set the laptop on Marcus's desk, pulling up an encrypted communication log. Our tech team cracked Nikolai's email server. Look at this exchange from 2 days ago. Marcus read the messages, his pulse accelerating with each line. Nikolai and Vincent discussing the custody plan in explicit detail, bribing a child services supervisor to fast-track the investigation, feeding false information to police, even planning what would happen after the boys were in state care. The messages referenced offshore accounts, specific amounts of money, and most damning of all, a timeline for making the boys unavailable for return. This is it, Marcus breathed. This is everything we need. There's more. Torres pulled up financial records. We traced the payments. Vincent's been funneling money to Nikolai for years, not just for this, but for other operations. We found records of the men who threatened Elena 3 years ago, payments made the week before she disappeared, bonuses paid after she was confirmed gone. It's all here. Marcus stared at the evidence, his uncle's betrayal laid out in clinical detail. Vincent had seen Elena as a weakness and had eliminated her with the casual cruelty of someone removing a business obstacle. And now he was trying to do the same to Milo and Evan, erasing them like they'd never existed. Can we verify this independently? Make sure it'll hold up to scrutiny? Already done. Our forensic accountant confirmed the trail. The communications are authenticated, metadata checks out, IP addresses match known locations. It's solid, boss. This would bury them both in any courtroom. Courtrooms take time. Marcus stood, his decision crystallizing. We're not going through courts, we're going through the one thing Vincent can't control, public opinion. Get this compiled into a comprehensive package. Financial records, communications, everything. Then get me a meeting with Knox Harrow. Torres blinked. Your rival? Boss, he's been trying to take your territory for years, which is exactly why he'll help. Marcus pulled out his phone, already composing the message. Knox hates Vincent almost as much as he hates me, and he's been looking for leverage to expand into the north side. We're going to give him what he wants in exchange for something I need. What could Knox possibly have that you need? Marcus smiled, though there was no humor in it. Connections. Knox's cousin is a federal prosecutor who's been building a RICO case against organized crime families. If we give them Vincent and Nikolai on a silver platter, wrapped in evidence so clean even the FBI can't ignore it, they'll jump at the chance. And once the feds are involved, the state custody case becomes irrelevant. That's a huge gamble. You'd be exposing your own operations. I don't care about operations, I care about my sons. Marcus sent the message to Knox, a simple request for a face-to-face meeting. Get the evidence ready for transfer. And Torres, make sure it's absolutely bulletproof. Because if we're going to burn Vincent's world down, I want to make sure he burns with it. The meeting with Knox Harrow happened at midnight in a neutral location, an abandoned warehouse in Bridgeport that both men's security teams had swept for bugs and threats. Knox arrived with his usual entourage of hard-eyed men who looked like they ate nails for breakfast. Marcus came with Torres and 2 bodyguards, keeping the numbers even. Knox was a lean, dangerous man in his early 50s, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that calculated every angle. He'd been clawing at Marcus's territory for a decade, always pushing boundaries, always testing weaknesses. Now he studied Marcus across the empty space between them, curiosity evident. Marcus Vale requesting a meeting, Knox said, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. Must be desperate times. I have a proposition. Marcus gestured to Torres, who brought forward a tablet loaded with the evidence. Information that will eliminate 2 of your problems and give you an opening into markets you've wanted for years. Knox took the tablet, scrolling through the files with increasing interest. When he reached the financial records connecting Vincent to Nikolai, his expression sharpened. This is verified? Every byte. My tech team and a forensic accountant both confirmed it. That evidence shows my uncle and Nikolai Konstantin running illegal operations through shell companies, bribing law enforcement, and conspiring to kidnap and potentially murder 2 children. Marcus let the implications sink in. Your cousin at the federal prosecutor's office has been looking for exactly this kind of case. Something clean enough to take to trial with documentation that can't be dismissed. And you're just giving this to me. Knox set down the tablet, suspicion creeping in. What's the catch? I need the feds to move fast, not months, not weeks, days. They raid Vincent and Nikolai, arrest them publicly, and make enough noise that the state custody case against me becomes obviously corrupted. In exchange, you get credit for the tip, your cousin gets a career-making case, and when the dust settles, you can have Vincent's territory. All of it. Knox's eyes widened slightly. Vincent's territory was substantial. Waterfront operations, import connections, political influence accumulated over decades. Marcus was offering to gift wrap an empire. Why? Knox asked bluntly. You've been protecting that territory from me for years. Why hand it over now? Because my sons are in state custody, and the men who put them there are planning to make them disappear. Marcus's voice roughened despite his best efforts. I'm offering you everything I've been fighting to keep if you help me get my boys back before it's too late. Knox studied him for a long moment, and something like respect flickered in his expression. You'd really burn your own family for this. Vincent stopped being family the moment he threatened Elena. Marcus met Knox's eyes. Do we have a deal? Knox considered, running calculations Marcus could almost see. Then he extended his hand. We have a deal. But I want one more thing. After this is over, after your boys are safe, you and I sit down and redraw the territorial lines properly. No more of this constant border war. We establish clean boundaries and stick to them. It was more than Marcus had expected to concede, but he didn't hesitate. Done. They shook, 2 rivals becoming temporary allies in a war against common enemies. Knox pulled out his own phone, already dialing. My cousin's going to want to verify this independently before she moves. Can your people make themselves available? Whatever she needs. Marcus felt the first spark of hope since the raid. Just tell her to move fast. The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Knox's cousin, Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Harlow, proved to be as sharp and ruthless as her reputation suggested. She brought in her own forensic team to verify the evidence, cross-referenced every detail, and built an airtight case with the speed of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this opportunity. Meanwhile, Marcus was stuck in forced inactivity, forbidden by Patricia from trying to contact Elena or the boys. He spent the time reviewing security footage from the estate, replaying that last morning when everything had been almost normal, before the SWAT teams and warrants had shattered their fragile peace. Torres brought updates every few hours. Sarah's moving fast. She's already got warrants drafted for Vincent and Nikolai, and she's coordinating with the FBI for simultaneous raids. They're planning something big, televised arrests, perp walks, the whole show. When? Tomorrow night. She wants maximum media impact, and she's timing it to coincide with a major charity event where both Vincent and Nikolai will be present. Very public, very humiliating. Marcus allowed himself a small, savage smile. Vincent had used publicity as a weapon, feeding stories to make Marcus look dangerous and unstable. Now that same publicity would destroy him. His phone buzzed with a new message. This one from an unknown number, but clearly from inside the facility. The text was brief. Boys asking for you. Elena holding up, but scared. Hurry. Someone on the inside was sympathetic, probably one of the staff members who'd seen how devoted Elena was to the boys. Marcus typed a quick response. Help is coming. Keep them safe. Then he deleted both messages, just in case. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He stood at the windows of his office, staring out at Chicago's skyline, and thought about the wedding Cassandra had wanted. 2 weeks, she'd said. A televised ceremony that would have locked Marcus into a life of careful appearances and calculated moves. He'd almost taken that deal, almost convinced himself that legitimacy was worth the price. But standing there thinking about Milo's laugh and Evan's careful observations, Marcus knew he'd made the right choice. His sons were worth more than any empire, worth more than reputation or respect or power. They were the only thing that mattered. The next evening, Marcus watched the news coverage from his office, Torres standing beside him as the story broke across every channel. FBI raids at 2 locations simultaneously, Vincent's estate in Lake Forest and Nikolai's waterfront compound. The footage showed agents in tactical gear, black SUVs with lights flashing, and then the moment everyone had been waiting for, Vincent Vale in handcuffs, being led out of his mansion in front of a dozen cameras. His uncle looked smaller on screen, diminished without the aura of power he'd always carried. The news anchors were already speculating about charges: conspiracy, bribery, child endangerment, racketeering. Sarah Harlow appeared on camera, her statement measured and devastating. These arrests represent the culmination of an extensive investigation into organized crime's attempts to manipulate the legal system for criminal purposes. We have evidence of threats, bribery, and conspiracy that will be presented in federal court. The second raid showed Nikolai being dragged from a charity gala in downtown Chicago, still in his tuxedo, his face twisted with rage as agents surrounded him. The Russian fought them briefly before being subdued, his arrest far less dignified than Vincent's quiet surrender. Marcus's phone exploded with calls, reporters, rivals, people who wanted to know what was happening and what it meant. He ignored them all except one, Patricia Chen. "Turn on channel 7, she said without preamble. Marcus switched channels and felt his heart stop. The news was showing footage of the facility where Elena and the boys were being held, police vehicles arriving in force. But these weren't there to reinforce custody. They were there to investigate corruption. The anchor's voice carried clear excitement. In a stunning development, authorities are now investigating allegations that the custody case involving Marcus Vale's children was part of an elaborate conspiracy to kidnap and potentially harm the minors. State officials are reviewing all decisions made in the case, and there are reports that the children and their mother may be released as early as tonight. "Patricia, I'm already at the facility," she said. "They're processing the release now. Detective Morrison's here, looking like someone kicked his dog. The state's attorney is furious. Turns out the supervisor who fast-tracked your case was on Vincent's payroll. It's a complete disaster for them, which means it's a win for us." Marcus was already moving, grabbing his jacket, shouting for Torres to get the car ready. "I'm on my way. Don't let them leave without me." "Marcus, wait. There's press everywhere. If you show up, it's going to be a circus." "I don't care. Those are my sons, and I'm bringing them home." The drive to the facility took 20 minutes that felt like hours. When they arrived, the scene was exactly as Patricia had warned. News vans, cameras, reporters shouting questions at anyone who emerged from the building. Torres had to physically clear a path through the crowd, Marcus following in his wake with single-minded determination. Patricia met him at the entrance, her expression caught between professional satisfaction and genuine relief. They're inside signing final paperwork. "Elena's been cleared of any wrongdoing, and you're being formally recognized as the biological father with full custody rights pending final approval." "Where are they?" "Conference room, 2nd floor, but Marcus, the boys have been through a lot in the past 2 days. They're confused and scared. Elena's doing her best, but..." Marcus was already past her, taking stairs 2 at a time. His heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through his ribs. He burst through the conference room door and froze. Elena sat at a table, both boys pressed against her sides, their faces tear-stained and exhausted. Milo saw him first, his eyes going wide. Then Evan. For a horrible second, Marcus thought they wouldn't recognize him, that 2 days in state custody had erased what little connection they'd built. Then Milo launched himself across the room, hitting Marcus like a small missile. "You came! You came to get us!" Evan followed more slowly, but with equal intensity, wrapping his arms around Marcus's legs and holding on like he'd never let go. Marcus dropped to his knees, gathering both boys close, his own tears finally breaking free. "I'm sorry," he whispered into their hair. "I'm so sorry. I should have protected you better." "You saved us," Evan said, his voice muffled against Marcus's shoulder. "The lady said you saved us from bad men." Marcus looked up at Elena, who was crying silently, her hand pressed to her mouth. She stood and crossed to them, and suddenly they were all holding each other, a family reunited in a government conference room with fluorescent lights and cheap furniture. "Let's go home," Marcus said when he could speak again. "All of us. Let's go home. The drive back to the estate was nothing like the terrified flight that had brought them there days earlier. Milo chattered nonstop from his car seat, telling Marcus about everything that had happened at the facility in a 4-year-old's version of events that jumped from scary policemen to nice ladies who gave them cookies to Evan crying at night. Evan himself stayed quiet, pressed against Elena's side, occasionally reaching out to touch Marcus's shoulder as if confirming he was real. Elena looked hollowed out, running on fumes and maternal instinct. Her eyes kept closing despite her obvious efforts to stay alert, and Marcus noticed the tremor in her hands when she smoothed Milo's hair. "Sleep," he said quietly. "I've got them." "Can't." She forced her eyes open. "Need to make sure we're really out, that this is really over." "It's over." Marcus glanced at Torres in the rearview mirror, receiving a subtle nod of confirmation. Vincent and Nikolai were both in federal custody, their operations being dismantled by agents who'd been waiting years for this opportunity. They can't touch you anymore. Any of you. But Elena had lived with fear too long to let it go easily. She stayed awake through the drive, through the gates opening to admit them, through the walk into the house that had transformed from fortress to prison and back again. Only when both boys were settled in the living room with warm milk and blankets did she finally allow herself to collapse on the couch, exhaustion claiming her before she could fight it. Marcus carried her upstairs to the guest room, laid her gently on the bed, and covered her with a blanket. She didn't wake, lost in the kind of deep sleep that came after sustained terror finally released its grip. He stood watching her for a moment, remembering the woman she'd been before all this, bright and fierce and unafraid. She'd get there again. They all would. Downstairs, both boys had fallen asleep on the couch, tangled together the way they probably slept every night, finding comfort in each other's presence. Marcus sat in the chair across from them, just watching them breathe, letting the reality sink in. His sons were home. Elena was safe. The men who'd tried to destroy them were facing federal charges that would put them away for decades. Torres appeared with coffee, setting it on the side table without a word. Marcus took it gratefully, the heat anchoring him to the moment. "Sarah Harlow called," Torres said quietly. "Vincent's already trying to make deals, offering to give up other operations in exchange for reduced charges. Nikolai's lawyer is screaming about entrapment and illegal surveillance. Will any of it work?" Sarah says no. The evidence is too clean and the optics are terrible. Two powerful men trying to kidnap children through corruption of the legal system? That's the kind of case that makes careers. She's not letting it go. Torres paused. She also said to thank you. Apparently this opened doors to investigations she's been wanting to pursue for years. Marcus nodded, too tired to feel satisfaction. And Cassandra? Giving interviews about her narrow escape from a dangerous relationship. She's spinning the whole thing as her being the victim of your deception. Torres's tone suggested what he thought of that narrative. But the engagement's officially dead, and the Haldens have already started looking for other partnerships. Good. Marcus sipped his coffee, watching Milo's chest rise and fall. Let her have her story. I don't care anymore. The next few days passed in a strange limbo of recovery and readjustment. Elena slept for nearly 18 hours straight, her body finally allowing itself to rest. The boys bounced back faster, their resilience both heartbreaking and inspiring. By the second day, they were playing with their toys again, though they stayed closer to Marcus and Elena than before, needing constant reassurance that the separation was over. Patricia Chen arrived on the third day with a folder of legal documents that needed signatures. She spread them across the dining table, explaining each one with clinical precision. This finalizes Marcus's parental rights and establishes joint custody with Elena. This one updates the boys' birth certificates to include Marcus as the father. And this... She pulled out a thicker document. This is a protection order against Vincent Vale and Nikolai Constantine, legally barring them from any contact with you or the children. Enforceable even if they somehow make bail. Elena signed each document carefully, her hand steady now. Marcus watched her add her signature next to his, making it official. They were co-parents. A family, at least on paper. There's one more thing, Patricia said, her expression softening. The state wants to make amends for what happened. They're offering a settlement, compensation for the trauma, the false accusations, the violation of your rights. It's substantial. How substantial? Elena asked. Patricia named a figure that made her eyes widen. Enough money to never worry about rent or food again, to give the boys opportunities Elena could only dream about in her bakery apartment. There's a catch, isn't there? Marcus said. You have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. No media interviews about the custody case, no public statements blaming specific individuals in the state system. They want this buried quietly. Patricia's tone suggested her own opinion about that request. My professional advice is to take it. The money's real, and fighting them publicly won't change what happened. Marcus looked at Elena, letting her make the call. She studied the document for a long moment, then shook her head. No, she said firmly. I don't want their money if it means staying silent. Other parents need to know this can happen, that the system can be corrupted, that rich men can buy custody decisions. If we take the money and shut up, we're letting them pretend it was just a mistake instead of a crime. Pride surged through Marcus's chest. This was the Elena he'd fallen in love with, the one who fought for what was right even when the easy path beckoned. We're refusing the settlement, he told Patricia. Make it clear why. Patricia smiled, something rare and genuine. I was hoping you'd say that. I'll draft a statement for the press. This is going to make waves. The statement hit the media 2 days later, Elena's words carrying more weight than any amount of money could have bought. She spoke clearly about the corruption, the fear, the violation of having her children torn away by men who'd twisted the law for their own purposes. The press ate it up, turning the story into a rallying cry for custody reform and accountability in child protective services. Marcus watched Elena handle interview requests with grace and steel, never backing down, never apologizing for demanding justice. She'd grown into someone even stronger than the woman who'd left him 3 years ago, tempered by hardship into something unbreakable. Meanwhile, the federal case against Vincent and Nikolai moved forward with devastating efficiency. Sarah Harlow proved as ruthless as promised, presenting evidence that painted both men as architects of a criminal conspiracy stretching back years. The bribes to the CPS supervisor were just the beginning. Investigators uncovered money laundering, witness intimidation, and enough other charges to guarantee both men would die in prison if convicted. Vincent tried one last desperate move, reaching out through intermediaries to offer Marcus a deal. Drop the evidence, convince Sarah to go easy, and Vincent would disappear quietly. Marcus's response was brief and final. Tell my uncle he made his choice when he threatened Elena. Now he lives with the consequences. The trial was set for 6 months out, giving prosecutors time to build an even stronger case. In the meantime, both Vincent and Nikolai remained in federal detention, their empires crumbling as former allies scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. Knox Harrow honored his word, taking over Vincent's territory without conflict. He and Marcus met one more time to draw clean boundaries, establishing a peace that would have been impossible before. Knox had gotten what he wanted, and Marcus had saved his family. Both men could live with that trade. As spring turned to summer, life at the estate transformed in ways Marcus had never anticipated. The sterile showpiece of wealth became something lived in and messy and real. Toys permanently occupied the living room. Crayon drawings covered the refrigerator. The boys' laughter echoed through halls that had known only silence for years. Milo started pre-kindergarten at a private school Marcus carefully vetted for security and quality. Evan, still cautious but growing braver, made friends with a neighbor's daughter who came over for playdates supervised by enough security to protect a head of state. Both boys thrived, their nightmares from the custody ordeal fading as stability replaced fear. Elena was the harder puzzle to solve. She'd moved into one of the estate's guest suites, maintaining careful distance from Marcus even as they co-parented with increasing ease. They had breakfast together every morning, shared dinner most nights, and spent weekends doing family activities with the boys. But when the kids went to bed, Elena retreated to her space, and Marcus didn't push. He was learning patience, something his old life had never required, learning to build trust brick by brick instead of demanding it wholesale. Learning that love wasn't about possession or control, but about showing up consistently and letting the other person choose you every single day. One evening in late July, Marcus found Elena on the back terrace watching the boys chase fireflies across the lawn. Security kept discreet distance, giving the illusion of privacy in their carefully monitored world. They're happy, Elena said as he joined her. Really happy. I don't think I've ever seen them this carefree. You should be happy too. Marcus leaned against the railing beside her. You're still holding back, Elena. I can see it. She was quiet for a long moment, her eyes tracking Milo's joyful sprints. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone else to try and take them, or for you to realize this isn't what you wanted, or... She stopped, frustrated with herself. I know it's not rational. Vincent and Nikolai are locked up. The legal cases are settled. We're safe. But I can't quite believe it yet. What would make you believe it? Elena turned to him, vulnerability naked in her expression. I don't know. Time, maybe, or... She hesitated. Do you remember what you said 3 years ago, before I left? Marcus did, though the memory hurt. I asked you to marry me. You asked me to be your wife and stay in the cage you'd built. Her voice was gentle but firm. You offered me everything except freedom. And when I asked for space to breathe, to have my own life outside of being Marcus Vale's girlfriend, you said it was too dangerous. That loving you meant accepting protection that felt like prison. I was wrong. The words came easier than Marcus expected. I thought keeping you close kept you safe, but all it did was make you feel trapped. And now? Elena searched his face. If I wanted to go back to work at the bakery, would you let me? If I wanted to take the boys to the park without security, would you trust me to keep them safe? If I needed space, would you give it without making me feel guilty? Marcus understood what she was really asking. Had he changed, or was he just better at hiding the same controlling instincts? Lou asked about you coming back, he said carefully. She called last week, said the bakery's not the same without you. I told her it was your decision, and if you wanted to work there, I'd make sure it was safe without being intrusive. He paused. As for security with the boys, I won't lie and say I'm comfortable with minimal protection, but I'm learning to trust your judgment. If you think something's safe, I'll believe you until you give me reason not to. And space? I'll give you all the space you need, even if it kills me. Marcus managed a small smile. I'm not the same man you left, Elena. I've spent 3 years building an empire that meant nothing, living in a house that felt like a mausoleum, telling myself I didn't need anyone. And then I saw you at that crosswalk, and everything I'd convinced myself of just shattered. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. The boys need a real home, not a fortress, not a safe house. Somewhere they can be kids without armed guards watching their every move. Okay, Marcus said it before fear could make him hesitate. Tell me what that looks like, and we'll build it, together. Over the next month, they transformed the estate. Marcus hired child development specialists and security experts who understood the difference between protection and imprisonment. They installed safety features that were invisible to the boys. Reinforced glass that looked normal, panic buttons disguised as light switches, security cameras that didn't scream surveillance state. The guard presence was reduced and repositioned, creating space for the boys to play without feeling watched. Marcus converted part of the grounds into a real playground, complete with swings and slides and a treehouse that took 3 weeks to build properly. And then Elena made a request that nearly stopped Marcus's heart. I want to open a bakery, she said one evening after the boys were asleep. Not go back to Lou's, start my own place. Something small, maybe in Pilsen, near where we used to live. Somewhere the community knows me, where I can build something that's mine. Marcus's first instinct was to list all the security concerns, all the ways it could go wrong, but he caught himself, remembering his promise. Tell me more. Elena pulled out a folder she'd clearly been working on for weeks. Business plans, location scouting, financial projections. I've been saving from the state settlement, my half at least. It's enough for a down payment on a small commercial space. I want to focus on traditional Latin American baking, serve the immigrant community that doesn't have many good options. The settlement was yours to keep, Marcus said. You earned it? Half feels right. We're partners in this parenting thing, even if we're not... She stopped, leaving the sentence unfinished. Anyway, I found a space. It needs work, but the location's perfect. I wanted to run it by you first. Marcus studied the plans, seeing her dream laid out in careful detail. A part of him wanted to buy her a pristine, ready-made bakery in a safe neighborhood with top-tier security. But that wasn't what she was asking for. She was asking for his blessing to build something herself, in a community she loved, on her own terms. "Do it," he said. "And if you need help with renovations or equipment or anything else, ask. But it's your business, your vision. I'm just here to support however you need." Elena's smile could have powered the city. She threw her arms around him in an impulsive hug that ended too quickly, leaving Marcus aching for more. But he didn't push, just returned her smile and asked to see the designs for the bakery's interior. The bakery opened 3 months later, a modest space with Elena's personality stamped all over it. Warm colors, comfortable seating, display cases filled with pan dults and conchas, and all the recipes she'd perfected over years of early morning shifts. Marcus attended the opening with the boys, watching Milo and Evan hand out free samples to customers, while Elena beamed with pride behind the counter. Security was present but invisible, Torres and his team posing as regular customers, keeping watch without creating tension. Marcus sat at a corner table, drinking excellent coffee and watching his family thrive in a space Elena had built herself. A woman approached his table, elderly with kind eyes. "You're Elena's Marcus, yes? The father of those beautiful boys?" Marcus nodded, waiting for judgment or questions about his reputation. Instead, she smiled. "She talks about you sometimes when the morning regulars come in. Says you're learning to be a good man." The woman patted his hand. "Keep learning. That one's worth the effort." After she left, Marcus sat with those words. Learning to be a good man. Not already good, not reformed, but actively working at it. It was more grace than he deserved, and exactly what he needed to hear. That night, after the boys were asleep and Elena had finished recounting every detail of her successful opening day, Marcus took a chance. "Move in with me," he said. "Not as my girlfriend or my partner or anything with a label. Just stay. Make this place a real home instead of a way station. Let the boys grow up in one house with both parents under the same roof." Elena studied him, and Marcus could see the war behind her eyes, fear versus hope, caution versus desire. "I'm not ready for more than that," she said finally. "I'm not ready to be us again, Marcus. Maybe someday, but not yet." "I know, and that's okay." Marcus meant it. "I'm not asking you to be my anything except Milo and Evan's mother who lives in the same house as their father. Separate rooms, separate lives, where they don't overlap, but together where it matters. For them." "For them," Elena repeated. Then softer, "And maybe a little bit for us. To see if we can be friends again before we're anything else." Friends sounds perfect. She moved into the master guest suite 2 weeks later, turning it into her own space with books and plants and all the personal touches Marcus's sterile house had never known. The boys were ecstatic to have both parents permanently present, their bedtime routine expanding to include story time with Elena and song time with Marcus, who discovered he had a terrible singing voice, but his sons loved it anyway. The months blurred together in the best possible way. Milo lost his first tooth and demanded the tooth fairy leave exactly $3, no more, no less. Evan learned to read simple words and proudly demonstrated on every sign they passed. Elena's bakery became a neighborhood fixture, her reputation for quality spreading through word of mouth. Marcus gradually stepped back from the remaining criminal operations, using his arrangement with Knox to exit the underworld cleaner than anyone had managed before. He kept the legitimate businesses, real estate, investments, import companies that actually imported legal goods. It meant less money and less power, but it also meant his sons wouldn't grow up afraid of their father's reputation. The trial of Vincent and Nikolai concluded in early December with convictions on all major charges. Vincent got 25 years federal prison. Nikolai got 35, his threats against the children adding aggravating factors. Both men would be old or dead before they saw freedom again. Marcus didn't attend the sentencing, choosing instead to spend that day with his sons at a winter festival, drinking hot chocolate and watching them marvel at ice sculptures. Elena came too, and at some point during the afternoon, her hand found his. They stood like that for a while, watching their boys play, not quite together, but not quite apart either. That evening, after the boys crashed hard from sugar and excitement, Elena found Marcus in his office reviewing the last of the legal documents from the trial. "It's really over," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "All of it. The threats, the fear, the men who tried to destroy us. All of it, Marcus confirmed. Say it. He closed the folder, done with that chapter. What now? Elena smiled, and there was something new in her expression. Not just contentment, but genuine happiness. Now we build something better. Now we prove that broken things can be fixed if you're patient enough. Are we talking about the bakery or about us? Both. She stood, moving around the desk to where he sat. I'm not ready to call this a relationship, but I'm ready to admit I don't hate having you around. Marcus laughed, pulling her closer. High praise. Don't let it go to your head. But Elena was smiling, and when she kissed him, brief and sweet and full of possibility, Marcus felt something he'd thought was lost forever. Hope. The winter passed into spring, and with it came new routines and small miracles. Milo decided he wanted to play soccer, leading to weekend games where Marcus stood on sidelines with other parents, learning the strange democracy of youth sports. Evan discovered dinosaurs were more interesting in museums than in toys, leading to monthly trips where he peppered docents with questions about the Cretaceous period. Elena's bakery expanded, hiring 2 employees to help with the morning rush. She came home smelling of cinnamon and flour, her hands always slightly burned from oven work, her smile constant. She and Marcus fell into an easy partnership, co-parenting that felt less like shared custody and more like actual family. They started having dinner together every night, the 4 of them around a table that rang with conversation and laughter. Marcus learned to cook basic meals, much to the boys' amusement and occasional horror. Elena taught him that burnt toast was a sign of trying, not failure. Slowly, carefully, they rebuilt trust. Elena started sharing more about her years on the run, the terror and loneliness, but also the small joys of watching the boys grow, of building a life from nothing. Marcus talked about the emptiness after she left, the way he'd filled it with empire building that meant nothing without her. On a warm April evening, exactly 1 year after that rainy night when Marcus had seen Elena at the crosswalk, he made a decision. He found her on the terrace again, in the spot that had become their place for serious conversations. I have something for you, he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Elena's eyes widened. Marcus, it's not what you think. Well, it is, but also isn't. He opened the box, revealing 2 items, a simple gold band and a key. The ring is a promise, not a proposal. I'm not asking you to marry me or commit to forever or anything you're not ready for. It's just a promise that I'm going to keep showing up, keep trying, keep being the man you and the boys deserve. And the key? Legal ownership of the estate, half of it, in your name. If you ever want to leave, if you ever feel trapped, you have the power to walk away with everything you need. The house, the resources, the security. You're not dependent on me, Elena. You're my equal partner, and this makes it official. Elena took the box with shaking hands, staring at the contents. You're giving me half your house. Our house. The boys' house. Marcus cupped her face gently. I don't want you to stay because you have nowhere else to go. I want you to stay because you choose to, every single day. And if the day comes when you don't choose this anymore, I want you to have the freedom to build something else without starting from nothing. Tears streamed down her face as she slipped the ring onto her finger. You really have changed. You changed me. You and those 2 amazing kids sleeping upstairs. Marcus kissed her forehead. I love you, Elena. I've loved you since the moment we met, and I'll love you until I stop breathing. But I'm learning that love isn't about holding on tight. It's about holding space for someone to be fully themselves. Elena set down the box and wrapped her arms around him, her head against his chest. I love you too. I'm still scared sometimes, still waiting for it to fall apart, but I'm ready to try again. Really try, not just coexist. They stood like that until the stars came out, 2 people who'd been broken and scattered finding their way back to whole. The path had been brutal, threats and separation, custody battles and federal trials, fear and fury, and finally, slowly, healing. But standing there with Elena in his arms and his sons safe inside, Marcus knew it had been worth every brutal step. The boys woke them the next morning by jumping on the bed, Marcus's bed, where Elena had finally stayed the night, just sleeping and talking until dawn. Milo demanded pancakes while Evan wanted to know if they could go to the park. Normal requests, normal chaos, the beautiful mundane magic of family. Marcus looked at Elena across the breakfast table while Milo explained an elaborate plan for a dinosaur birthday party 3 months away. She caught his eye and smiled, the ring glinting on her finger, and in that moment, everything made sense. He'd built an empire and lost it, chasing legitimacy. That didn't matter. He'd gained a family by learning to give up control. The trade was more than fair. It was everything he'd never known he needed. Years later, Marcus would tell the boys the full story when they were old enough to understand. He'd tell them about the rainy night, the subway chase, the men who tried to tear them apart. He'd tell them about their mother's courage and their father's redemption, and the way broken things could heal if you were patient enough. But that morning, with syrup on Evan's chin and Milo's laughter echoing off the walls, and Elena's hand finding his under the table, Marcus just lived in the moment. He'd spent a decade planning and controlling and building empires. Now he was learning something harder and infinitely more valuable: how to be present for the people he loved, how to protect without imprisoning, how to be the father his sons deserved and the partner Elena had always needed. The estate had transformed completely. Where sterile minimalism once reigned, now lived the beautiful chaos of childhood. Toy trains still snaked through the living room. The bakery expansion Elena had built on the south lawn filled the house with the scent of fresh bread each morning. The playground had been joined by a garden where both boys grew vegetables they usually refused to eat, but were proud to harvest. It wasn't the life Marcus had planned when he'd built his criminal empire. It was infinitely better. Because empires crumbled and power faded, but family, real, honest, chosen everyday family, that was the only thing worth fighting for. And as Milo dragged him outside to play dinosaurs while Evan helped Elena clean up breakfast, Marcus finally understood what he'd been searching for his whole life. Not control, not legitimacy, not even redemption. Just this: the ordinary miracle of coming home to people who loved him, not despite his flaws, but through them. The extraordinary gift of sons who called him dad and meant it. The impossible grace of a woman who'd forgiven the unforgivable and given him a second chance he'd spend the rest of his life earning. Marcus had closed the gate on his old life. The violence, the empire, the cold isolation of power, but he'd opened the door to something infinitely more valuable. A real home filled with real love and the messy, beautiful work of building a family from broken pieces. And that, Marcus thought as Evan's laughter joined Milo's across the lawn, was the only empire that mattered.